Patrick Colletti, you are a leadership and organizational culture expert. You are an experienced CEO, board director, and advisor for angel investing, venture capitalists, and private equity backed organizations. And you are the author of Refounder, How to Transform Leaders, Take What's Broken, and Make It Better. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me today.
So, Patrick, your book is mostly is business tilted, but you also open the door to all kind of leadership. You want people to become better leaders and refounders of things that are already working. So this is what's great because not all of us can create something from scratch. But all of us have the opportunity to arrive to a place, see things that are broken, and take leadership and make it better. So that's why I think your book is so valuable. But before we get into it, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of information about your background. First of all, how is it that you got into the field of business?
Sure. Yeah. So I was probably considered an entrepreneur in my youth. I had the paper route. I did some landscaping, and I did odd jobs because I wanted to earn money. So I'd say that was generally in my DNA. I studied philosophy and business in college, and then I got my first job in business. And I did have a couple of role models, early on that were running companies, and they kind of gave me that path, so to speak, to see you can run a company. This is something you can do. You can be creative about what you want your future to be.
This is interesting. So you had that entrepreneurial instinct right from the beginning, yet you choose to study philosophy. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I studied philosophy, a lot of people were scratching their head. But what I've come to find now, and actually a friend of mine, Dr. Chris Howard, says this from time to time, and it's this notion that successful leaders take a monkey bar approach, not a corporate ladder. And so sometimes you kind of swing from very different experiences, and you bring that to bear for your present leadership. Now, I say that because business in life is all about philosophy. It's the way that we think, it's what we believe, it's our theories of knowledge, and it's our worldview, the way that we experience the world and then act because of it. And so, today, I think everything's philosophy. I think the kind of companies I invest in, the kind of the way I carry myself on a board, or the way I lead a company, it's all about that belief. And so, I've found that philosophy has actually been really, really powerful and an interesting tool to bring to business.
Well, you know what? I agree with you, but at one time in history, I used to see classes like philosophy and history and things of the human subjects as a waste of time and money. And I have come around and I changed my way of thinking, but there's a lot of pushback. If you tell your father or mother, "Mom, I'm going to study philosophy or anthropology," they will question, well, who's going to pay for that? Because because I don't want to pay for an education if you're going to end up working in Starbucks as a barista. So
Sure.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the value of all these other fields that are not per se utilitarian.
Yeah. So when I think about philosophy, I think about learning how to critically think. And so if you share with your parents that what you really want to do is become a critical thinker, I'm sure they'll be pretty supportive. Now, that being said, maybe you're already a critical thinker and you want to study accounting because you want to be great at accounting. And candidly, you want to help companies flourish by not making stupid mistakes with their money. And so, the critical thinking is the first part, but then really it's what you do with it. So, let's say that you decide that you want to study accounting or product management or sales or software development. It's really the thing that drives you behind that. Why are you doing what you're doing? And so, at least for me in the early days, philosophy helped me to kind of get to the bottom of well, what's the why behind what you're doing? And so whether you apply that to software development or Uber driving or being a chef, that notion that there's really a higher purpose to what you're doing, there's a bigger purpose that can be applied to any discipline.
Well, that makes completely sense, and I hope some of the listeners who take that to heart, because I have been part of the other side, that if it's not a job that it has a set purpose, just don't even consider that. And as I told you, I have changed my way of thinking. But okay, so now can you tell us how you stumble upon your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a first job out of school and I learned a lot. It was really interesting. And then I decided to make a move into a slightly riskier role, and I joined a dot-com startup. And it was, just like you would have imagined a dot-com startup would have been back in the day. And it was a bunch of young folks who, kind of lacked direction, but had a lot of ambition. And within about a year and a half, the company failed. And I got a phone call from the chairman of the board, and he said that everybody had been laid off except for two of us. And if we were willing to stick around and give it a go, they would fund payroll for 90 days at half salary. And so, my real entree into leadership came in the form of a crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you make that company survive? I mean, everything was already so dark and bleak and hopeless. How do you pull it off?
Well, it helps to have a really good, partner in that. And so I had an excellent partner, Christopher Hayes, and then about 1,000 things had to go our way as well, right? So it was really making those first initial good decisions, the things we think of today in the book Refounder about specifically how do you start over and start fresh in something. So it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of A/B testing. And certainly some good luck and good fortune in there as well.
So at the end, you were successful. How far do you take that success?
Yeah, so we went from a company of was really in the turnaround. It was two people to a much larger organization today, shy of 1,000 employees, but significantly larger. And today, to give you a sense in terms of impact, about 20,000 healthcare facilities in the United States use our software. And that's about 200,000 clinicians. So people who are actively seeing and helping heal patients, about 200,000 use our system each day. And that's to treat about 3 million patients a year.
Wow. So let me ask you, if we are placed against the wall, can anyone create that turnaround in a particular space of their life, whether it's family, whether it's their community, business, or were you just lucky?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely reproducible. And again, that was one of the reasons I decided to write the book, was that it's not only reproducible and it's not only possible, it's what we're supposed to do. And so an organization, a relationship, a not-for-profit institution, these need to be refreshed. And so really it's a notion that I'm sending out a call for refounders, and these are the people that are going to take broken things and make them better. The reality is there's millions of us out there, and there are people who are doing this daily in relationships, doing this daily in for-profit and not-for-profit organizations.
Okay. So take us to where you are today. I mean, in your bio, I see that you are part of several board of directors, and you are an advisor for angel investing and venture capitalists. How that happened after you did this successful turnaround?
Yeah. So it's really been part of my DNA since day one, and it started out when we had just a little bit of success, that I would take a meeting with virtually any entrepreneur that wanted to chat. And what I found was that, leadership is really lonely. And when you're running a company, or you're leading a product, or you're leading a department, there's this inclination to want to pretend that you have it all together. And so I learned pretty early on about strengths leadership and some other valuable assessments that helped me recognize that I didn't have to live in that myth of being well-rounded. I didn't have to act like I had it together. And so it created a pretty easy rapport with whoever wanted to meet with me, whether that was somebody I work with or somebody who had a startup or somebody that was running $1 billion company. And it just started there. And then over time, I started getting invitations to join boards, both for profit and not for profit. And then after a little more time, I wanted to be really intentional about how I invest my money. And I thought about businesses that were really redemptive. And so I started to look for opportunities where the money would both achieve a social good and and be a good investment. And so I'd say that's kind of the trajectory that I've followed.
Right, that's nice. So do you find that helping others succeed in whatever is it that they want to succeed is also a way to help yourself indirectly?
Well, it's the only way. You know, you'll live a very selfish and sad life if there really isn't a higher purpose, or as Simon Sinek would say, a just cause to your actions.
Okay, and, so then you are busy, you are doing all this, your regular job plus you are advising. How do you carve out the time to write this book, and what was the inspiration? I mean, I'm sure your agenda is quite full.
Yeah, so the seed was planted in my heart about 10 years ago. And I met and spent some time with a really interesting group of people who were musicians and artists and authors. And again, it was that when you experience it and when you recognize these are regular people, it gives you a little bit of hope that you can do it. And so about 10 years ago, I got that seed planted. About 6 years ago, I started to take the first steps in doing some writing. And then a little more than a year ago, I actually dedicated about half of my professional time, to writing the book and editing the book. And I had some great partners help me along the way. And it was an exciting journey. It wasn't something I thought I would do when I was younger, but having been through the experience, I'm thankful.
Okay, so taking a look at your book, I see that there are 4 steps that a person can take in order to become a co-founder. Can you take us over those 4 steps?
Yeah. So, as I walk through these, think about really the 4 personalities that you hear as I describe this, because any successful refounder is going to have a team. And whether that's because they actually have teammates that fill in some of the blanks that they're missing, or whether it's that they have good mentors or advisors. You can't really do any kind of successful refounder movement unless you've got a team. So as I walk through them, imagine for a moment that I'm really talking about 4 different people. And sometimes, refounders are really strong in 2 of these. So not to say that you can't be strong in more than one, but generally there's a particular persona. So in the first one, refounders aren't afraid to take a sober look at hard realities. And so just, imagine for a moment this level of awareness that this first step requires. So being willing to take a sober look at a hard reality is not a comfortable thing. And there's a whole lot of people today, they don't want to live in a sober reality. And I'm not talking about drugs or alcohol. I'm talking about being aware of what's really occurring. And so that takes a special kind of person. So that's step one. And then step two is, identifying what's broken. They determine this thing we call in the book problem zero. And problem zero is the problem that really threatens the path forward. It's not the root cause. It's the problem that threatens the path forward. And so using that, refounders selectively focus. And so I use a phrase in the book that William Faulkner wrote about, which is kill your darlings. So when there are lots of options, and any entrepreneur, and I think we as people like to have options, you really there needs to be a time where you selectively focus or kill your darlings. The third is that refounders imagine audacious and bold new possibilities, even if those possibilities seem remote. Now, just for a moment, Alan, juxtapose that third step with the first. Somebody who is really sober-minded and willing to take a hard look at realities versus somebody who is willing to imagine audacious and bold new possibilities. So there's a dreaming and a creativity that really needs to happen in this phase. And then finally, Refounders spring to action, and they're creating better realities for all people, both those in their communities and outside of their communities. And this is that notion that there needs to be a just cause, a bigger purpose, so to speak, because you can spring to action and be great at execution, but unless there really is a vision that is compelling, it will only work for a short period of time.
Okay, on the first one, take a sober look at reality. Do you think this is what Kodak, BlackBerry, and Blockbuster didn't do? They didn't see the reality in front of them, and then they were holding on to the past, and then all of a sudden they find with nothing.
It's a great point. And really, we try to make this point in the book, and that is that just because you were successful in one refounding element, you must continue. And so we see this all the time with product lines where, after about 5 or 6 years, they get stale. They start to obsolesce. And unless you're taking proactive action, and this happens with lots of large companies, you're forced to buy your innovation rather than take incremental steps to refresh. So this is very common. I think you give a good example.
Right. And they're willing to look at new possibilities. Do you think this is maybe the superpower of Jeff Bezos? I mean, he's always looking for, I don't know, let's do this, and then let's connect it with this, and then add it to this other thing. It's just like he has an array of super possibilities everywhere.
Yeah, so the example we use in the book is a fellow named Astro Teller, who I think is one of the most interesting creative folks around. And he is the CEO or captain of moonshots at X, which is the moonshot factory. And by definition, that's what they're doing. And in fact, they're doing all of these things, right? They're looking at what's broken with the world. They are focusing on a few bets, and then they are going all in. And if you look at any of the things they're inventing and working on, like driverless cars or ways to do vertical farming, I mean, the number it's significant, but it's really by definition creative. It's audacious. It's things that, it kind of combines Willy Wonka with Jeff Bezos and others, Elon Musk. Kind of all in one. So it's I'm thankful for that example, and we're glad to use it in the book as well.
Can you tell us more of the people that you feature in the book?
Absolutely. So one of the encouragements I really want to make is that the places we live, work, and play are the places that we need to be refounders. And so it's not just a business that's on death's door. There are some massive problems that I think we need to get to fixing. And so we address a few of them in the book. One of them has to do with healthcare. And there's 2 examples in the book of healthcare. And one has to do with the epidemic of amputations related to African Americans. And it's a stunning and sobering reality that if you're Black in the United States, you have a 3 times higher likelihood of losing your limb to complications with diabetes. It's awful. And this year there'll be, 70,000 people who lose one of their legs. And if you lose one, you have a 50% chance of losing the second limb within 5 years. That's a problem, and it's a health equity problem. Another example in healthcare is we talk about the opioid epidemic and a couple of small interventions, particularly around physical therapy, that can make a huge difference in the number of people who are initially prescribed opioids. So healthcare is one example. Education is another example. And we interviewed Dr. Chris Howard to talk a little bit about the infrastructure of education and some notions around what really should be changing there as well. I interviewed Paula Ferris, who is a pretty relatively famous newscaster, was on The View and Good Morning America. And with Paula, we discussed in depth really what it's like to be a refounder in your own life. And so there's an element of personal development in the book as well. And there's lots of other examples. There's really 7 that we focus on. But the takeaway is it's everywhere. It's your neighborhood. It's your organization. It's the institutions that you belong to. These things, just like a product that obsolesces, they need refounders. They need renewal.
Right. A person in an organization, let's say that sees an opportunity, and this person has a salary mentality. So he sees an opportunity there, but he says, "Oh, I'm not a leader. I don't get paid for that." So he lets that opportunity pass by because he's not. He just doesn't care. I think most of us should take that mentality of being refounder, even if we don't see a direct link of how contributing an idea can directly benefit us. And I think your book takes us a little bit farther upon that journey.
Thanks. Yeah, it's absolutely the heart of the book, the spirit of the book is it's really all around us. And I think it's our responsibility here on earth. So whether it's, again, your family, whether it's broken relationships, whether it's the organization that you lead, whether it's the small department that you lead, or whether, in one example in the book, you're an intern and you feel like you've got no authority and no power, you actually do.
Right. Okay, Patrick, can you tell us one more time the title of the book and where people can follow you and see the progress of and everything?
Absolutely. So the book is called Refounder, and it's how transformational leaders make broken things better. You can check it out at refounder.com. You can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, both at Patrick Colletti.
Yeah, and I like to emphasize we are all refounders. Patrick, thank you so much for your time.
Alan, thank you so much.